All right, welcome back, photographers. We are here today to learn a little bit more of the creative side of Photoshop and altering your photos. So today, as you can see, we are going to apply what's called a spot color technique. We are going to use that spot color technique to create a spot duotone, and then we're going to learn about one of the students' favorites is lens flares that you can see here. So to define what a spot color technique is when you take a color photograph, you make it black and white, and you bring back a portion of it into full color so that it has that strong, bold contrast from your black and white. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So your finished image is going to look something like this. It may not look exactly like this, but it's going to be something like this. So let's go ahead and go to File, Open. From the computer, you need to go to Courses, Art, Photo Class, and we're going to open up the file called Spot Color Techniques, and we're going to click Open. So this is the original file. Let's immediately save this in our cloud. We're going to go to File, Save As, save it in the Creative Cloud. I want you to call it Spot Color, and then with your name, and hit Save. Now, if I forget to tell you at the end of the video, make sure that you have shared this with me. You do not need to export this file and attach it to the assignment in Google Classroom. You just have to share with me here, and then mark is done in Google Classroom when finished. Okay, so let's look back at the original image again. So like I said, we're going to be bringing back our image into full color. So what that involves is using something called the History Brush tool. So let's find the History Brush tool. So it's in this drawer. There's two brushes in here. There's the History Brush and the Art History Brush. You want to make sure you're using the regular History Brush. You do not want the regular brush tool. Lots of kids get confused. They're using the regular one. Nope, you want the History Brush. And what this tool does is it reinstates your photo to previous history states. So what I mean by history states is if I open up my history panel, you're going to see I have all these history states. So we know that if we click back on these, it's going to go back in time, right? It'll go back in time. But the problem with using the history panel is it goes back in time across the entire image. What the History Brush tool is, it goes back in time just in specific areas, okay? The other thing you need to know about this tool is it does not play nice with the crop tool. So if you need to crop an image, you must crop the image first, close it, then bring it back up, because if you've used the crop tool and the crop shows up anywhere in this history panel, it will not let you use the History Brush unless you've closed it and you've brought up the file. Then you do your next states, okay? But you have to crop it, then close it right after the cropping and bring it back up before you do anything else, all right? But we're not gonna crop this image. The first step is we need to open up our Layers panel. So we're gonna go up to Layers and open up our Layers panel. The first step is that we have to make this image black and white. We know that we can go up to Image Adjustments and do it this way, or we can do the better way and go down here to the Adjustment layer. We can go to black and white. It's going to open up the properties. You can slide it to make your darks redder, darker, lighter, yellows, however you want to do it. Go ahead and turn your image into a black and white image, and then close your properties. All right. The next step is if I grab my History Brush and I come across my image, notice I get a no sign. That's the same sign you would get if you'd use the crop tool. It won't let you. The reason it's not letting us use the History Brush tool right now is because it will not work on adjustment layers. And if I click back here, there's nothing really to do yet, so no effects will happen. So we need to merge these two. So we're going to merge this layer, these two layers onto one so we can use the History Brush tool. On our adjustment layer with it selected, we're just going to right click, and you're going to go to Merge Down. So you want to make sure that your black and white is exactly how you want it. All right, so go ahead and stop the video, make your image black and white, and then merge it onto one layer. All right, now back to our History Brush tool. So remember, your History Brush tool works just like any other brush. So you may want to think about grabbing one of the styluses to use with a drawing tablet, because it is a little bit harder with the mouse simply because you're brushing just like you would a normal brush. It also has the same exact option. So you're going to see you have the opacity. You can change your brush shape, brush size. It's totally up to you. For us today, you can grab either the soft round or hard edge round. It's totally up to you. And then I want you to just watch this next step. I want to show you what happens with the opacity. So I'm going to take my opacity way down. about 40%. Again, just watch this because I'm going to undo these states. If I brush across the flower, notice you're like, oh, it's a bright pink. If I go up to full, that's going to look much brighter because this is actually completely removing it. So if you take the opacity down, it's going to go back in time, but it's going to remove it just a little bit, okay? If that makes sense. So that's what the opacity will do. So you can change the opacity. I'm going to go back here. Okay. With your history brush tool, like I said, it works like a brush. So you're just going to brush across the edges of your frog. We're going to leave our opacity set at 100%. You pick the shape and size of your brush, and we're just going to click and drag across your frog. Now, one thing I will tell you is I strongly suggest you do lots of little brush strokes instead of holding your mouse button down or dragging your stylus and doing a lot because of this reason here. So if I make a mistake, oh, I went too far out of the margin, I let some of that flower, now I'm going to hit Control Z, but I haven't lost all of my progress. You will need to zoom in as much as you need to, make your brush smaller if you need to, but go ahead and you can stop my video here, and I'm going to pause mine, and let's go ahead and give it a try. Let's bring back the full color to our frog. All right, welcome back. So a couple things I want to show you. If you notice, I did accidentally included some of this here. So this is what you can do if you do make a mistake like this. I suppose I left a couple of things out here. You can go back in time and remove some color, but what you're going to have to do at that point in time is you're going to have to use the sponge tool and go to desaturate. So I would grab the sponge tool, I would set that to desaturate, I would go full strength, make my brush smaller, and you can go back. It's going to take some time. You brush it until you remove that color again from that area. So that's how you can kind of erase the spot color. It's not the best way. That's why I tell you guys to use lots of small strokes. It's a lot easier to do it that way. All right? But hopefully you've gone through, you've cleaned up your edges, and you have a nice spot color effect on your frog. Okay? So this is where we all are. Before we move on to the next step, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some spot tools. Okay, so you guys know now the history brush tool to bring back spot color, but your spot tools are the ones you've already learned: the dodge, the burn, and the sponge. I want you to grab the burn tool. I want you to set your exposure to about 30% and change it to shadow, and I just want you to brush across underneath the shadows where our frog is. We're just going to pop out our frog just a little bit more. We're also going to grab our sponge tool because even though we brought our frog back to full color, his green isn't that bright green. So we need to make sure we set it to saturate. I'm going to take my flow to about 38%. I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger, and I just want to brush across, make his green a little bit greener. That's all I'm doing here, making his blue eye a little bit bluer. And if you want to, you can use your other tools here to affect the highlights and lowlights. So maybe I want to use my burn tool and I want to make my midtones a little bit darker on this back half. So those are your spot tools. All right, so stop the video and using the history brush to do your spot color, and then the spot tools to just give it some good visual contrast. All right, next up is, now that we've done spot color, we could just leave it this way. But one thing you'll notice is when you have spot color against flat black and white, it's really stark, meaning that the black and white is really gray and it can actually be really cold, and it might not fit the mood or message of what you're going for. So you may want to tint the black and white as a duotone. And there's lots of ways you can do this. I'm going to show you one way. The easiest way is in your layers panel, we're going to click and create a new adjustment layer. Now you can pick either the color lookup or photo filter. It's totally up to you. But I'm gonna go to photo filter. I know I just want to warm this whole thing up. I can click and drag and use whichever warming filter I want. If you want to follow along exactly with what I'm doing in the video, I'm using the first warming filter. I can make it more or less. So I'm kind of making it a sepia tint. If I wanted to, if I don't want to do that, I'm just turning that layer off. I can do the color lookup if I want to be a little bit more crazy and funky. I can add some of these different effects here. So like I could do the futuristic, so it really makes it weird or wonky. And remember, you can always take your opacity down, okay? So basically, in essence, what we're doing is we're just tinting that background. I prefer this warm one, but go ahead and stop the video, and I want you to apply either a color lookup or a photo filter adjustment layer. Okay, now that you've added your adjustment layer and we know this is exactly the way we want it to be, we're gonna merge this down just like we did with the black and white adjustment layer. Okay, so stop the video and merge that down. I could still tweak my colors in here. I could go back if I want to, because now it's one layer. I could go back to my vibrance. I can still mess around with these things. I can make my saturation brighter or darker. So you can always add more adjustment layers if you want to. Just be careful, because we want these to be good photographs. We don't want to go so crazy, so over edited that they look hyper fake. Now, obviously we know this isn't real, but when you make it hyper fake, what you do is you lose a lot of that beautiful rich detail in there and all the nice tints and shades. You got your light lights, your mid-tones, your darks. You want nice, good clarity. So be careful of over editing. All right, I'm going to delete that one off. I think it's starting to get over edited. All right, so last up, we're all the way to the end of the video, and we're here talking about lens flares. So let me explain a lens flare before we apply one. So what a lens flare is, it's this orb-like structure that you see here. A lens flare is actually an imperfection, all right? It is what happens when you have light that comes in through the camera lens and it bounces around. In other words, it doesn't go through and hit the sensor directly, or it hits the sensor and it bounces and it creates these orbs of light. It's doing that because you have the lens pointed directly or almost directly at your light source. And the light source is at a specific saturation or intensity that it creates this imperfection. The thing about light orbs or lens flares is that they can be a really charming thing. If you capture them, it can add to the mood. It can add to the magical quality of an image. Often you see lens flares at dusk and at dawn, at kind of those magical times of day and night where it's transitioning to day into night or night into day, and the sky kind of looks different, right? And it's capturing that in the moment in the photo. The problem with it is you can't see them to the naked eye, because it doesn't happen in your eye, it happens in the lens. So the only way that you know you captured a lens flare is when you preview it on your camera and you see it, or when you're opening your images on the computer. The other problem with the lens flare is you can't control where those orbs fall. So sometimes when you do it, the orb might fall like right on the face of the frog. Well, you don't want it to be there. You have very little control over where they happen, unless you really know science, and I don't know about you, I don't know that much. I can't anticipate where they're gonna fall. So a lot of times when you see a lens flare in a photo, I'll be honest, it's faked. It's been done in post-production in Photoshop, because we can control the intensity of this thing, where it is, all of those things, all right? So in our image, we're gonna go up to Filter, we're gonna go to Render, and we're gonna go to Lens Flare. Now there's other lighting effects, and you can, if you want to, if you have free time, play around with the other lighting effects. There's like a spotlight, some other ones. I'll be honest, they're kind of cheap looking. I don't think they look very realistic, but you can try them, have fun with them. But we're gonna go to Lens Flare. So you're gonna get a dialog box that pops up that looks like this. So the first thing you're gonna see is there's different types of lens types. This one should look familiar, 50 to 300. That's the lens that we use. That's our standard classroom lens. And that's going to show you the type of lens flare that you would get with this type of lens. And you can move your lens flare around, so the hot spot around, you can make it bigger, smaller, it's totally up to you. You can make your brightness more or less. You can also change the type. So if I change to a 35mm, it's just going to show you, it's just going to be a different type of lens flare, okay? You can go to the 105, you can see the difference in the lens flare, little less orbs. The movie one, I'll be honest, guys, please don't use it. Because you would never get that in a standard photograph. So it doesn't make sense to really have it on a still photo. If you were to do it in video, that would be a different matter, but we're not. So we're gonna go to 50 to 100. And where you place this thing, you do need to know a little bit about science. So if you have a cache shadow, which we do, and that's, I'll be honest, that's one of the reasons I darken this here so we can see it. Your lens orb okay, your dominant orb, that's where the light is coming through. It's going to be in the direction of where the light is coming from. So you have to be the opposite. So if my shadow is low and to the right, my orb has to be high and to the left. If my shadow was high and to the right, I would move mine low and to the left, right? So you have to be the opposite of where the cast shadow is. And you can decide if you want to make it close or far. That's up to you. If it's a really strict dark shadow, you're probably going to have it be a little bit further away. If it's a shallow, like just a hint of a shadow there, you're going to have it closer to your subject. So I'm going to put it like right about here, and I'm going to click OK. And that's pretty much it. That's your lens flare. So make sure that you have saved this and you've shared this with me in Photoshop. That's pretty much it. That's your spot color. That's how you tint a spot color, and that's how you add a lens flare. One last thing I will tell you is, now that I've shown you these, I want you to use them sparingly. I often tell my students lens flares are a lot like glitter. They can be overused and become obnoxious really, really quickly. So if you have the urge to create spot color or do a lens flare, you need to stop for a second, pause, and ask yourself, does my photo really need it? If your photo does not need it or require it, I would be very leery to apply it, because otherwise you're just applying it to apply it and it starts to look cheesy. But if your mood or message, like for me, it's kind of a magical little moment. There's a frog and a flower. I mean, you don't see that very often. There is some fantasy. It would be perfectly fine to add it to something like this. It would not, however, make sense to do this to, say, a picture of your basketball shoes. Okay, right? Like, why? That makes no sense, right? And you're often not going to see a lens flare indoors with indoor lighting. You often see it more outdoors. So keep that in mind as well if you plan on using lens flares in the future. Good job, everybody.